Welcome back, everyone, to Arsenal Pass, Time on the Round, episode 10. I'm Brendan Patrick, joined always by Hayden Dale. Hayden, how are you doing?
Good. You can't just you can't just cold open though. People are the fans are expecting your roasting.
A
So
roast. I know. If you guys want to DM me roast, definitely don't post it in the comments because that would be mean. But I am light on roast, and it's very creatively demanding to roast this man. But maybe sometimes I just want to be nice, Hayden. I just want to cheer you up before your weekend. Make you feel good.
yeah, we can swap
Yeah.
roles if you like.
Oh God, no, there'd be a freaking be an Arsenal on your side to throw at me. But Hayden, what do you got planned for the weekend? Do you have road to nationals, or what are you looking at?
No road to nationals for me. I'm actually going to get to play 2 road to nationals next weekend though. They will be online, unfortunately. Just current situation. So that's cool though. It's cool that I do get to play a couple of road to nationals. That's last weekend of the season. So looking forward to that. But I know you have a road to nationals or 2 this weekend, and you might have had one. Yeah, 2 this weekend, and I heard there might have been one last weekend as well.
Yep. So I went to Kansas last weekend. We talked about this on the pod, which was interesting. I ended up winning, but it was a really cool experience. So I guess we can do like a little tournament report, and
Yeah,
then
do it.
I have a few things to say about Kansas. Kansas, it's a weird place in the U.S. It's they call it like a flyover state. I don't know if I'm not allowed to say that if it's like a mean name. It's obviously not a nice name, but it is something that people would say to me. But it's pretty accurate, right? Like I never knew anybody that had gone to Kansas, was from Kansas. I didn't know anything about Kansas. So I actually, and I'll get into it, I actually had a really positive experience. So it was very enjoyable. But let's go into the tournament. So it's in Kansas, right? It's 5 hours away. I decided to do a kind of a 2-nighter out of it. So went up on Friday, stayed the night, went to the store. Store was pretty interesting. It was much smaller than usual. And yeah, I remember when I got there, I was super afraid of like getting there and then kind of like saying that it was full or something, even though I was paid and it was on my event. I always have that anxiety is that I'll drive 5 hours, spend this money on a hotel and then just be told to take a hike when I get there. But nope, it was all good. Got in, got in the store on time, was ready to go. A bunch of people from Oklahoma. So pretty much it was weird because it was a 30-player event, right? It was smaller than Edmund Unplugged, which was 52 the week prior. But pretty much everybody from the top tables at Oklahoma had driven up to compete.
That's cool.
So yeah, even though we were at 30 players, like definitely it wasn't easier for being smaller, that's for sure. And if you're at 30 as well, you end at 5 rounds of Swiss and not 6, which is great if you if you're expecting to win and you want to go home early and all this stuff. But in terms of like a competitive way of like trying to make top 8, it's definitely not ideal. Probably prefer 6 rounds, but it was all good. I was happy for it. I was down to do a 5-rounder and have a nice day. But we actually just ran through the tournament. We didn't take any breaks, which is really nice. But let's talk about it. So round 1, on chain, I'm notorious for being the biggest punter in the world. Round 1, face against Ninja. Play a hedge board, and then it ended up being like the Control Ninja-esque deck, but it was played very aggressively, which it should suit me in that case. But it was a little much for like the first round, and it was pretty close. Like I was definitely not in my comfort zone yet, and just getting those round 1 kind of jitters or whatever bad plays out of me. Did take it down though. Then I headed into round 2, which was actually a Viserai. So similar to Jason Chung's build, but much more aggressive, much more mid range.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting game. Luckily, I did have the Null Rune, which of course I didn't use. Like the Null Rune is a funny thing to bring versus the Viserai. It's like when you don't have it, you're gonna, it's really gonna feel like you lost the game because you didn't have it. But when you do have, you're like, I never used it. So I really think the jury's not out there. But I'd rather have it. Just because if it was a slower build, I probably would have felt it a bit more. I think I was able to pivot before he was. And then like the Arcanine Ascendancy in his arsenal was just kind of useless after that because I stripped the hand. And of course, like Husk is just the greatest insurance policy to ever exist against Arcanine Ascendancy. So I think you're quite favored as chaining that matchup. Round 3. So I was 2-0. Then heading into round 3, I played against Bravo. It was a control Bravo. I think he had played 2 Shanes before me and he had beat both of them. Which was interesting because it was full fatigue, full control. I mean, he did pivot with a crippling crush, which is funny because this is the first time I've ever done this. I actually put my Husk and my my Grasp of the Arcanite in front of the crippling crush to dodge it, and weren't even that low. I just knew that I was actually pivoting. I was on like Shackle 5, Shackle, and I had seen him pitch a snag, and I knew there wasn't really going to be anything else to worry about. So ended up rift binding him for I think it was like 40 or something like that.
Just a casual.
Something crazy. And it wasn't even, it was literally right at my stack. So yeah, I had stat, like right as I hit my stack, it was basically just boom all the way across, and yeah, a bunch of go again and the Ursa. So I was able to get that one pretty handily. In round four, round four, I played my first chain. This was this guy named Cameron from Oklahoma. Really nice guy. I think he's pretty involved in the kind of legacy Magic the Gathering scene out there, which actually have a huge scene for legacy in Oklahoma. I didn't know
Really?
that. But yeah, he was a really nice guy, and it was awesome getting to play him. I was able to take it home in Swiss, but I do meet him again later in the tournament. And then round five, I actually played another chain. It was a guy from Nebraska. It was a funny match because the first thing he said to me, sat down, he was like, "Oh, it's my favorite match. This is my favorite matchup. It's like chain v chain." I was like, I thought he was joking. I honestly thought he was 100% kidding. And I was like, oh wait, he's serious. So he's like, I actually really enjoyed the matchup. I was like, okay, yeah, I do kind of concede that there is some skill to the matchup. Like when we talk about it being like very high rolly, obviously we're kidding. It is annoying. Like when we played in testing, like yeah, it gets frustrating because there is definitely swings of variance, but still very skill based. So he was actually able to take that one, kind of a dance of invert, and there was two really nasty command and conquers during that game. Specifically El Clasico of Half from Beyond, Nebula Blade Shackle, or Shackle Nebula Blade Command and Conquer, which is just icing on the cake. That one sucks to get hit by. So yeah, that got me pretty bad. And like, I had played with an Arsenal. I prioritized playing with an Arsenal during that game while my opponent did not. So it's funny, while being on the other side of Command and Conquers and taking a serious beating from them, it would have been absolutely worthless for me to be running in that game, which was pretty funny. But yeah, 4-1, obviously that's a clean cut into top 8. I think I was actually number 2 seed. So I actually dodged that opponent, win 6-0 in Swiss as chain. Started out my first top 8 match. That was chain v chain. This was Cameron. This was the guy from round 4. From round 4. I won that one again, but it was much, much closer. Basically came down to a bit of an invert endgame. And yeah, it was really, really tight. And it was a brutal match for sure. My semis was actually pretty funny. It was the same guy I played the last weekend in the semis. So it was the Dash player. Literally the same person, same match, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, he definitely went very aggressive on, kind of boosting, and it was pretty tough in the beginning. And then as soon as I kind of pivoted, Shackle 4, Shackle 5, and started coming in, that was sort of the end of the game. And I was able to clean it up pretty closely, but I did go down to a pretty low life total.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was an interesting one. Heading to the finals. All right, yeah, sorry. My computer died there. So anyway, heading into the finals, my opponent was from Nebraska. Him and his friend had driven down. It's funny because he actually tagged me on Twitter yesterday. He wasn't supposed to come to Texas, but apparently they made a last-minute decision to drive down here. So I'll be likely seeing him again in both events this weekend. But anyway, his name was T. It was a really good match. It was funny. It was one of the more interesting chain matches. It's actually streamed if you go to the Pink Elephant Games Facebook. But I was like extremely ahead, like 19 health, like 19 life to like 5 or something really ridiculous. Like Huss, it was so far ahead. And then he did an Art of War and did about 20 damage pivot off of 0 resources with 3 Shadow Versers and 2 Bounding Demions. It was absolutely crazy. Actually made the game very close, and then I won just off arcane damage on my next turn, presenting 3 arcane. So that was a tight one. It's actually really cool. That guy, I checked out his YouTube, by the way. It's TEE, like T, but with 2 E's. CG Gaming. He actually has like a learn to play video on Flesh and Blood, like fully animated.
That's cool.
I think it's like the best. I think it's like one of the best ones out there. It's
really?
it took like 10 minutes to watch it. It was really well done. Yeah. Like the animation is amazing. But so I won again. Interesting. This guy too in the finals. He's gone into top 8 at Road to Nationals 5 times and has lost in the semis of the quarters 5 times in the finals. Sorry. He's coming down here trying to finally get his win.
He wants that tunic. Fair enough too.
Yeah, it was a good experience. I don't know. It felt really good to get number 3. I did speak to LSS and they told me that I need to get 6 in order to finally get on the website. So we are working on that one. So got to get number 5 and 6 to sneak on. But yeah, 3 in a row feels pretty good. Or not 3 in a row on chain. So 100% win rate on chain. And I think I'm like, was it 24-4 or something like that or less? So 24-3. Yeah. So pretty good. Yeah, I've been having good results on him. So it was a great experience. Yeah, it's a good experience.
Nice. Yeah. And so this weekend is Texas. You've got two this weekend, right?
Yep, very, very lucky. They're back to back. They're about an hour and a half away from each other, but both around 40 minutes away from me. Yeah, it doesn't get any better. As a way to close it out, I do not want to have one on the weekend following that, unless it's an online one, which I might compete in. But yeah, it was a good experience. I do want to say something about Kansas, though. Which I want to say. I had
If the floor is yours.
pretty much no expectations, like quite low. Like it's middle. It's like Great Plains, like Middle America. Who knows? Who knows? I met some of the coolest people that I've like ever met in my life. Like some experiences, like that I like with conversations I had with people that were just unbelievable. So I went to this Barnes and Noble, right? In
The
Kansas.
bookstore?
Yeah, the bookstore. The bookstore. I went to the bookstore, right? And it was like after I had gotten dinner and stuff, and this guy that worked there came up to me. It was like I was just in the science fiction section. He just like asked me a few things, and then I no kidding, like 30, 45 minutes, he gave me like a full entire like just one-on-one like experience, like told me like about all these books, all these authors, all these crazy facts, and like seriously, like 45 minutes, like 15 minutes passed. He was like one of those people. I kid you not. So I lived in California for a while. I lived in actually like Carmel, which is like a very kind of like boutique area and they have these like little bookshops. He's definitely like one of those guys that you could have like hired and just been like your flagship product of your bookshop, and people would be traveling to California. It was an unbelievable experience. It was the last thing I expected. I just couldn't. Honestly, I was blown away. We called in the next day, and literally was like, talk to the manager to like say that this was such a good experience. I just never would have expected it. And like the same thing kind of happened to me after. Yeah, so the same thing happened as well after the tournament. I was waiting for my ride outside the store owner, came out and talked to me, and I don't know, it was just like really humbling. So we were talking, and he owns obviously he owns the game store, all this kind of stuff. But like then he was just talking to me about like what he does outside of that. Like he's a teacher and like the school district down there, and he has like a math degree, and he's like trying to start up the engineering program out there, and just all these things that like I don't know. I had these human experiences that I felt like were very humbling, right? Like I didn't expect as much depth and just so much character out of these conversations that would usually fall under the category of like small talk to be. I don't know, they were like actually like kind of touching. I don't know why. And I've kind of walked away from the experience like really humbled and just like kind of wanting to look at every conversation I walked to with like a more open mind. It was just weird, and it like that's like a very kind of chic way of saying it, but it seriously was like that was the experience I had. Is like, and that's what Kansas was to me. It was like this really, I don't know, really awesome experience of people, which I did not expect. And it's kind of weird when those things happen.
Yeah, that's cool. I can fully get that. I think in like getting philosophical, but like in life, right, you have often so many like fleeting conversations and things you don't remember, and it's like it's an attitude thing as well about like how you approach those kind of conversations. Obviously it's both ways, right? Like if one person's kind of just doing lip service, then it's probably not going to be a memorable conversation anyway. But I think when you go and you meet people from different walks of life or different areas, different regions, I think you can have these really cool interactions. You learn something about them, they learn something about you. I feel like that's one of the joys of like traveling, especially internationally. You like learn about different cultures. This is obviously a little bit different, but still it's an area you haven't been to before. You had some really cool experiences, and I honestly find that that's like one of the best things about traveling is having these interactions. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, to be honest, that's also a huge shout out to everybody who came up and said nice things about the podcast and about the YouTube, because like it just means so much, and that has been like the most for me the most rewarding experience. Is like I had a lot of people come up to me and they're like, tell me where they're from, or like it's in like Nebraska or Missouri, and I remember someone saying like, yeah, in Nebraska, all we like Arsenal Pass is all we have, so like they're like, yeah, you guys helped us get into the game, all this stuff, and it's just something that it's like an impact that you're totally unaware of until somebody talks to you about it, and it makes everything worth it. Like every time you do it when you don't want to do it. But yeah, it's just awesome when people come up and they say positive things. It means a lot. And yeah, all my experiences traveling so far in the season have been awesome. A lot of cool people and a lot of people that have, enjoyed the podcast or the YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you've got, the two we just talked about, Texas this weekend. Time of the round obviously goes up just after the weekend. So when this pops up, it's Monday. Or Sunday evening. What are you playing this weekend, Brendan? What's the deck you're taking into Road to Nationals 5 and 6 for you?
So Road to Nationals 5 and 6 hopefully wins 4 and 5, but I will be taking Chain. Just because, like I said, had a little little backdoor conversation with LSS. They told me that I do need 6 wins to appear on the website. No, I'm kidding. I'm playing changes because we are going up to we're going into Vegas, so I feel like I just want more reps. I want the highest level of competition possible to like mimic that scenario and be as comfortable as possible when I finally do sit down in Vegas and play for real stakes. So that is the only reason I'm shying away from other decks. It's not because I'm a one-trick Shane or I think that Shane is so abusively overpowered you can't play anything else. I just want to push myself mentally as much as possible to stretch my comfort zone while I'm like, on this deck, so that when I do get to somewhere that is imminent, right? Less than probably 15 days by the time this comes up, I'll be as ready as possible. So that's what that means to me. So yeah, chain both days and just gonna try to grind out a few more wins.
Yeah. Yeah, you tell yourself what. No, I'm kidding. We actually had. So I think there's a few decks obviously that we've been playing and testing, and there's one deck in particular that I did want Brennan to play for one Road to Nationals, but it's probably not quite where we need it to be. It's a deck that I think we'll probably do a deck profile on in the coming weeks, and we'll throw up on the YouTube. It's a really cool, fun deck, and I think it can actually be competitive in this meta. So. Yeah, although it won't be being played at Road to Nationals. Although outside chance actually that I maybe potentially play it at one of my online ones, considering it's random prices anyway. Otherwise, we'll be throwing that up in the next 2 weeks on the YouTube channel. I'd say, right, Brendan? We'll get that up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really I'm hoping that kind of our next thing for the YouTube channel will be like a chain tell all. Obviously, that it's somewhat dependent on spoilers, right? If the spoilers kind of say that like nothing's going to change, then I'm still game for it, but maybe Dante will, put a gun to my head and tell me I can't say anything. So who knows? But hopefully, like we can finally kind of talk about the chain deck and like where we were throughout the entire process, because this is absolutely a deck that we've been on since week one. We've taken it to the PTI, then we've taken it to the Road to National season, and seen a lot of success with it. And like the iterations of the build we've gone through and sort of the theory behind the deck has been really interesting. And I think there's been many a period of time during back, since week one up until now, where our opinions on the deck and the meta have been extremely different from that of, the vocal majority.
Yeah, I mean, at least so now. I think the meta is starting to shape up how we expected it to, but it's taken a while to get there. It's taken some roads, but yeah, no, really excited to see the last 2 weeks of Road to Nationals. I just wrote an article for Channel Fireball on just like a bit of I guess. I did this after week one as well, and then we talked about week two, the data coming out of the events, but just a bit of a week four update on where we are now. I think the meta's definitely changed as we've gone through the Road to Nationals to some degree. The 3 decks that have really been up there since day one, with Katsu, Bravo, and Chain are still there. We've seen Bolton come through. We've seen Prism continue its unfortunately woeful results in top 8s. And yeah, I mean, I was going to say number 5 might shock you, but I think when you look at like some of the decks that are sort of sitting on the fringes, there's a few new meta players. Like we've seen Viscerai taking a couple of events, we've seen Reinhardt take more than a few events now. So yeah, I think just interested to see what the last 2 weeks look like as we head into the Calling Vegas. We're in now, and this is crazy to think, right, Brendan, but we're in the last 4 weeks of Monarch Constructed.
I know.
Tales of Aria is here in 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels weird because I did a lot of testing and I put a lot of work into Welcome to Wraith meta when I was testing with Sasha, and we went to that calling. But it honestly pales in comparison to the amount of just work and effort we put into the Monarch format. And I feel like, I know we talked to this before, like I feel like my perspective on the game has completely changed, and it's going to be really interesting going into a new expansion, learning the things that we've learned, and kind of those. It seems like the entire way that I kind of view the game has taken on like a new light, and it's really cool. But yeah, I definitely feel more in tune with Flesh and Blood than I ever have. So seeing new cards and seeing new design space only gets me more excited.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, should we have a bit of a chat about some of the spoilers we've already seen? There's some really cool, things that have come out in the first 2 weeks. Spoiler season doesn't start until 3 days from when Time the Round goes up. We actually have a spoiler, so do just want to say again, we have a spoiler that's going to be going up on Friday. Brendan doesn't actually know this, but we have got a confirmed time. So our spoiler is going up on Friday at 2 p.m. Sydney time. It's going up at 4 p.m. New Zealand time, and I believe that works out to be 8 p.m. in CST. I don't know what that is in PST, but yeah.
Interesting. It's 2 in PST if it's 8 CST.
There you go. So is that right?
It can't be 8 p.m. if it's 4 p.m. there. There'd be a 4-hour time difference, right?
Yeah. Tell you
I
what,
don't
we're
know.
going to start talking about spoilers, and then I will come back to you before the end of this episode with the confirmed time in the US. I'm not great with the time zone conversions. That's meant to be Brendan's job. Usually we what's the time right now in CST, Brendan?
4:46 p.m.
Okay, so six hours from now, basically, that it would go up. So it's actually like 11 p.m. There you go. Later than I thought.
Makes more sense. That's why you're in charge of the numbers, Hayden, and I'm in charge of remembering names because I'm really good at that, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
Hilariously bad. So take us into it, Hayden. What do you want to talk about
well,
first?
I thought so. I mean, I'm assuming that most people who watch the channel have seen the spoilers. They've been pretty prominently out there. We've seen Lexi for the first time, which is really cool. We've got our Elemental Ranger. I'm actually just going to bring up these spoilers so I can look through them as we talk. Yeah, so Lexi, Elemental Ranger hero. We have that Lexi has the essence of Ice and Lightning. So really cool. I think just really telling us that we're going to have a few sets of elements in this set, which I think people had already speculated on. It was kind of mostly known, I think, to a degree. I guess we don't know now what the other elements look like. Whether there's one more element, whether there's two more elements.
Earth, right? Earth is the one that was just spoiled.
Oh yeah, because we've seen the element. Yeah, so we know there's Earth now as well, but we don't know if there's a fourth one or we just got three elements. I don't know. What are your thoughts on? Do you think we have three? Do you think we have four?
3 or 4. It's interesting because we do think we have three heroes, right? Because of the Blitz decks and everything kind of points to that. So 3 elements. Gosh, I don't know. This is why I hate. This is why I hate. I hate speculating. But let's say Lexi has Ice and Lightning. The other one has Ice and Earth, and then the one after that would have Lightning and Lightning and Earth, right? That would kind of be the full circle. So I think that ties up correctly. I have to think. I don't know. I just hope the next one's a wizard, man. To be honest, I just hope it's a wizard.
Yeah, I've said pretty true to. I think we get two arcane heroes, 2 arcane rising heroes, and we get one Welcome to Wraith hero. Sorry, classes. That was kind of my thought because to be honest, it's not very scientific. We had in Monarch we had 2 Welcome to Wraith classes, 1 arcane rising class, and then 1 brand new class. And we have 3 heroes. So I feel like for Alex's design, I think 1 class per year kind of fits. To be honest, at this rate, it introduces something new to the game, while you also go iterative on your current classes, but at the same time, you're not sort of putting too much out there. I think it's a really good balance between like new content for the game, so new cards for the game, but also just keeping people in love with like the classes that they're really into. I think if you go too much on the new spectrum, then people who are maybe they're in the game for warrior and they're in the game for wizard, whatever it might be, it becomes really difficult if you're not sort of focusing on those as your primary source.
100% agree with you. And like just to kind of add to that point, I feel like talents like Shadow Brute and like we talk about Shadow Runeblade, like Chain doesn't feel anything like Viscerai to me. It feels like a totally different class right now, at least. And I think that's really, really cool. But I agree with you. Like I think it keeps us in a more reasonable design space, right? We keep kind of retouching our old heroes, add one, like you said, like maybe every year, whatever it is. Makes it very sustainable at this point. So I like that. And like I said, like the heroes that we have gotten, the heroes, like the new talents of those heroes have felt so different. Like Bolton feels quite different from Dorinthia. Levia feels miles different from Rhinar, and then Chain for me just doesn't feel anything like Viscerai. But I think that's probably the way because of the way the Viscerai decks are currently structured. I think it's awesome. Like I definitely am totally in sync with you on that system.
I think Livia and Rhinar don't feel worlds apart. To me personally, as a brute player and someone who's played a lot of Rhinar and a lot of Livia, I don't think they feel worlds apart. It's definitely different, but that's because I think if you just isolate the banish zone as as a purely new mechanic that you're playing from banish, and then you talk about like the structure of how you're structuring your turns, the structure of your deck sort of criteria. It's actually very similar to Rhinar in a lot of ways, but it's enough different that it feels like if you don't like Rhinar, you could still like Livia because they are that much different. So yeah, it's a cool thing where it's like, yeah, they're same, but very different. It's quite a cool design aspect, I think.
And on the subject of Levia too, because we did touch on her, we like at this point we've been spoiled the 2 Arsenal slots. We don't know how it happens. I have seen some speculation, Hayden, that it's going to be an errata on reload. Like there is actually like a subgroup of people who are very, very confident that's what it is. It's some sort of errata that like hits on reload, lets you have double arsenal. And then I also saw a lot of people saying that like double arsenal will apply to everybody, right? Like that'll just be a new thing.
I'm
I
just shaking
personally
my
think
head
it's
over
going to
here.
be, yeah, I think it's going to be on the weapon so that it can't be played with shiver, or it's going to be on a equipment, the chest, right? It would surely be a chest to take away the incentivization of tunic, because tunic would be freaking ridiculous
Yeah.
in this. It looks crazy in Lexi.
I have a few thoughts on that. I'll start
Yeah.
with the last one you said. I think I agree. I think it's going to be on a majestic weapon or it's going to be on a legendary chest equipment. Just because of, like you say, design aspects of that probably balancing the hero. I mean, we don't know much, but the hero ability and the current weapon, so the common weapon,
Shiver, yeah.
yeah, Shiver. That's just ridiculous. If you have that, like that is a massive. I think there's a lot of things you could do from that in terms of interactions and exploiting some of those abilities. So I think that's probably where we see that. The other one about reload getting errated, I don't understand that at all because we pretty confidently know that the way that these sets were designed, that coming into Monarch and even up to Kingdoms, this big chunk of heroes and sets was pretty well established by James White and the original like designers of the game when it was in conception. And just the closeness of Arcane Rising to the set, so to Tales of Aria, Kingdoms originally codename, just feels like you would know a lot about what you're already doing in that by the time you get to print in Arcane Rising, because your design cycle tends to be that far ahead. So I wouldn't really understand them errataing reload. It would have already been pretty well known that they were going to have another ranger and what that would look like. I can't see that. In terms of other heroes having, 2 Arsenal spots available to them, sure, but how do you? It's not about having 2 Arsenal slots available to you. It's not about the slots on the board. It's about how you actually actively use those. So you need a way that says, because Arsenal says if you have an empty Arsenal, you can put a card into your Arsenal, right? Like that is the ruling on setting a card in Arsenal at end of turn.
So I didn't even think about that. So you can't double set, eh?
So you can't double set anyway, and so reload is the same as an empty Arsenal slot. So I think the templating and the way the rules are written are specifically for a reason. And what we see with Lexi is an exploration of the Arsenal zone, and we might see more of it in this set. We might see more of it in future sets as well. But I don't think it changes the way that the current heroes play and the way that the rules are written. Basically, I just don't see that. That would be a massive departure from how Legend Story Studios so far have structured their game. Just the way that these first few sort of groups of sets have been thought out. I'd be very surprised if all of a sudden it turns out LSS have, and the developers and the designers and James White have made this, what I would call probably a mistake at that point, because you're basically, if you're going to an errata format, you're admitting that you didn't have it correct the first time, you didn't have it planned out. So yeah, I'd be very surprised.
I think that things feel very planned. What's interesting is, if you look at the templating of Command and Conquer, I think it's like a card in an Arsenal zone. So obviously the Command and Conquer wording points to there being multiple Arsenals. I think that's where we first kind of assumed.
It was.
What I do wonder though is, like, now when we play Command and Conquer, let's say I play Command and Conquer on my opponent, they have 2 Arsenals.
Mm-hmm.
Do I get to pick one of the face down cards?
I thought Command and Conquer was destroy cards in all cards in Arsenal.
Is it all or is it 1? If it's 1, it'd be pretty funny.
Tell you what, let's have a look right now.
If it's all, that's even more. Oh my goodness.
I'm pretty certain it is, right? So Command and Conquer does say defense reactions can't be played to Command and Conquer's chain link. If Command and Conquer hits a hero, destroy all cards in their arsenal. So that was the indication that,
Okay,
As we talked about Command and Conquer even going, spiking in price even more. So this is the other reason I don't think they're going to errata reload, is the fact that in the set that they printed reload and they had a card that says destroy all cards in arsenal. So their templating was already future-proofed in terms of the fact that they know at this point that they're having a portion of the game come into play where they have 2 Arsenal slots. There's lots of things with, I think, Flesh and Blood that, have been future-proofed in their templating. You look and you go, that's kind of weird templating. And then you realize as sets change, this is why they've done it. And there's been, obviously there's been some rules changes, but if you look at the rules changes that LSF have implemented so far, the vast majority of them are actually quality of life changes so that the things work the way they were always intended to work, not to change things to work differently to how they were ever intended to work. There might be an example, and feel free to drop them in the comments if I've forgotten something there. But things like the way that Spectre interacts, the way that Vestige of Soul interacts, like all these cards, they were always intended to work the way they do work. They just when they're on release or before release just weren't quite correct. And there's been smaller erratas to cards. around release, and it's really just been about wording for things to work the way that LSS have wanted them to work. The biggest change actually outside of that is the way that reprise works, right? With Iron Song response. That's the biggest one. You
can just clear it.
Yeah, that's the biggest one. And to be honest, that's not that big. That's just a quality of life change, right? So that might be the only one that I can think of that's not directly related to how the card was originally intended to work. And then, of course, we banned drone, but
Yeah. Interesting. It's funny because Command and Conquer is kind of a bit of an all-star in the current format.
I agree.
I know we talk about it being overplayed, but it is probably being correctly played in this format due to high amount of defense reactions and high amount of decks want to play 5-card hands. But it looks like its stake in the format will only be going up. Clearing both arsenal zones got to be pretty punishing, I'd assume.
Yeah.
All
right.
We'll see, though. It's all about what the Frostbite token is, right?
That's literally what I was about to go next. So, we look at League C and we say, okay, cool. The things we know, elements are coming. We're going to say pretty macro here because I think we don't want to speculate too hard on certain cards or things, but we do want to talk about, I guess, what this kind of maybe means for the game. So you see, like you say, the Frostbite token, and that's the one that's got everyone talking, right? Like, it's Frostbite token, the chain hoser, like, is it the go again hoser? It's pretty obvious at this point, the fact that it says Frostbite token under target hero's control, that Frostbite is going to be an effect that is probably negative and does hit on your opponent. But what that actually does, who knows? Thematically, you'd say, well, it's some sort of slow, or it impacts the way that the opponent gets to play the turn, just, thematically with Frostbite.
Or they could take damage for playing it right. Like Frostbite is like, it's like an ailment, right? So every time you play an attack, if you're going again, you take a kind of like Remorseless on a token, but maybe it's too good.
maybe, but we'll see. Yeah. And then, if we talk about Shiver, I think one of the important things to know about Shiver is that is a once per turn instant. So really just, I think that was obviously the templating with an empty arsenal zone on that, but also the fact that, you could, over the course of your turn and your opponent's turn, fill 2 arsenal slots because Shiver allows you to do that. So, really cool card there. The fact that if you were to once per turn instant this in your opponent's turn, you don't get any buff from it. You just get to put a card in your arsenal, and it does cost you. Is really interesting. But at some points, that could be, that could be an effective way to play the card. So, or use the weapon.
It's really interesting. What do you think about Shiver in limited? The Dominate seems really good, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on how well we have. Yeah. So in Arcane Rising and Monarch, the defensive side of the game in limited was reasonably low. So you had the only defense reactions in Monarch were not that great, to be honest. Yeah. In Arcane Rising, you had Favor Scene. But in what we go back to Welcome Drake, you had a lot of access to defense reactions. So we had Unmovables, we had Sink Belows, we had class-specific defense reactions as well. So and quite good ones as well. So it'd be interesting to see what that means. I would actually love to see a bit of a return to a more defensive limited format. Obviously we know Tails is going to have at least a slightly higher power level than Welcome to Wraith did. But if we also saw some sort of defensive capabilities around that, I think that'd be really cool to see for the limited format. I'd love to see that. But yeah, I think Shiver in a limited sense would dominate on it. It does cost. So it is, having cards costs.
It's not free.
Exactly. So it does impact you in a limited sense. So we'll see what happens.
Looks spicy. All right. Take me into Fuse, Hayden. Take me into Fuse.
Yeah, so then what does it mean? Well, who knows? We see the first instance of the keyword Fuse on Weave Lightning, which is the 0 cost lightning action. So we've seen the red one, but it's a rare, so presumably a cycle. Which says the next lightning or elemental attack action card you play this turn gains +3 attack. If it is fused, it gains go again, and the card has go again. So, obviously fuse, something that you're probably going to be doing on your turn, something to do with the elements, probably, I don't know, don't want to speculate on it, but I think in terms of what this kind of card is showing, what LSS is saying by showing this card first, I think they're really keen to show off the keyword fuse. It's clearly going to be a very important keyword in this format. You assume that if it's on a lightning action like this and it involves multiple elements, fuse is probably found throughout the entire set. So in terms of throughout all the elements, would be a pretty safe assumption. So yeah, I think it's going to be. I think they've shown this card for a reason, which is I think the fuse is going to be like a marquee keyword of the set, which is cool. I'm excited to find out what it is. Same with Frostbite.
Yeah, Frostbite's really got me ready. I wonder if that will, another hero will also have the access to Frostbite. Surely would logically transfer to the other Frost essence hero, but it's interesting, right?
the ice
Hayden, I do
defense.
want to ask you real quick because I just kind of let us skip over. You did say 2 Arcane Rising classes. Do you think there's a chance it could be Mechanologist instead of Wizard?
I do. I actually do. I think it could be a mech, especially if, since we now know Earth, so we have.
Feels mechy.
Yeah, it could be. So it could be. I mean, we don't know. I guess Earth and Lightning could be Mickey. I honestly, Mickey sounds weird. Could be Mechanologist. Yeah, I'd be interested to see. I wouldn't be shocked if it was. I think it's more likely to be Wizard if I think it's 2 Arcane heroes. But yeah, we'll have to see. I'd be in favor of seeing a Mechanologist.
From Wizard?
I think so.
Blasphemy.
No, because
Sacrilege.
I'll explain. I think for the health of the short term of the game, I think I would rather see a Mechanologist. I think because I think the level of complexity with Monarch has just gone like this, right? And I see it a lot with people saying getting into the game, bought the Monarch Blitz decks, struggling a bit, to be honest. And I've seen players who have gone and picked up Monarch Blitz decks, and they've gone and picked up like the Welcome to Wraith intro decks, or like either the Aria decks or actually the precon decks, and finding that so much easier, which makes sense. Welcome to Wraith is a lot more of a basic format. It was the introduction to the game. But if we're having Monarch come in and then we layer on another Wizard, I think it's just more complexity, and it's a small thing. I don't think it would hurt the overall health of the game long term, but I do think it could be a small impact to newer players getting into the game and being really keen to pick up what they see in Tales of Aria if it's quite complex. Like, I think about Arcane Rising. That set now in retrospect, pretty baseline, right? We didn't have too much going on outside of the arcane damage, but that was that was a big challenge for a lot of players initially.
The limited too, I think, was a little bit before its time.
Yeah, I agree, but I do think from what I've all the things I've heard from reliable sources is that this is one of the best limited formats, and that would lead me to believe that this is a lot better format than Arcane Rising in terms of there might be some complexity comparisons, but I think the overall level of power and the way that things sort of work will be a bit more simplistic in some ways. So yeah, I'm hoping that's the case. But yeah, anyway, I would say that I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a Mechanologist over Wizard, but if it's a Wizard, which I think is more likely, I'm still happy with that. I love Wizard personally.
Yeah, and I respect your opinion, but part of our friendship does die when you do say you would be okay with seeing a mech over Wizard. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's funny because I dog on Ranger a lot, but I'm really dogging on Azalea. To see a new Ranger has got me really excited because Ranger is actually quite Wizard-esque. It's not as instant speedy and stuff like that, but in terms of deck stacking on a complicated deck, Ranger is right there with Wizard in my opinion. So I'm actually quite excited to see the new Ranger. But Hayden, I want to talk about Amulet of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've seen it. Infamously very, very good in Control Bravo, right?
Yeah, I've heard a few rumblings of that. Interesting. I mean, obviously, unfortunate that this looks like it was leaked, probably by a store, to be honest, because this is the promos for pre-release. So not sure if stores got this super early or whatever's happened. But obviously, it's a bit unfortunate if this wasn't yet to be released. Who knows? Actually, to be honest, with the way LSS, they're very, very sneaky sometimes with the way that they do some of their releases. I remember them in the first season, sending a few cards to stores or to players and people revealing them that way, and then them not claiming credit for it at all and things like this. So they are very hands off with it when it comes to the actual the spoilers starting to be revealed. They're very their schedule is very tight and they're very considered about how they do it. But in terms of the way that they talk about it, they don't generally talk about the way that they do it. So anyway. Talking about this card, I think when I saw this card, I was blown away first of all by the borders. So having the different change of color in the borders, we'd seen it with the lightning action, but it's a lot more more prevalent with what you see with the earth border, the green coming through, and it honestly looks beautiful, especially with this as a cold foil. This is clearly if you look at the war cards from Monarch with Eclipse Existence and the light one, which I forgot the name of.
That's going to be
Brave Hope. Yeah, thank you.
S-tier limited card, by the way.
S-tier limited card. Well, Eclipse Existence is a pick one, according to Sasha Markovich. So,
yeah, he retired for a reason. Okay,
over the hill, apparently. So, yeah, Amulet looks like that's it's equivalent to that. It's a bit of a marquee card of the set, which indicates a few things about some of the abilities. So, this being an item, I think is really cool. 0 cost blue, feels very playable. fact that it has go again on itself doesn't cost you
again,
the
yeah.
action point. That's massive, and the fact that the ability is also an instant, which I think is really,
Instant.
really key to look at. The fact that it gives you the +1 attack and +1 defense if
For
you
sure.
fuse this turn, which Earth fuse
Hints
this
to
turn.
fusing on your opponent's turn.
It does,
Yep.
it does, yeah.
Which is, I don't know what that looks like, but interesting, right?
reactions?
Because like, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, defense reactions, which is crazy because that +1. I mean, the +1 attack it's exciting, right? But +1 defense is really exciting because like, the most common breakpoint in Flesh and Blood is 4, and like so many hit triggers are associated with that 4 damage. And I don't know if you've ever played Art of War for the alternate cost of bump in the defense. You know how powerful blocking for 4 can be on an attack action. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, this is going to be a little bit like Art of War in that respect. Like, we're going to see it mostly used for the offensive because Fuse is presumably going to have a cost, right? So that's probably at least 1 card from hand, if not multiple cards from hand, in order to play a card plus pay for it. And maybe it fuses like an additional cost. So if you're doing that, giving +1 defense to 2 cards in your hand, that's actually really powerful. But it might not be happening all the time. So, and then we don't know what the ratio is between like fusing on your turn versus fusing on the opponent's turn. So I would feel like we're probably going to see like a 70-30, 80-20 split on this being used offensively. That's, I think, just the nature of these kind of cards. But the fact that this has an almost modal ability and can be used defensively, like I'm really excited about that. Whether that's because maybe you get to fuse by playing an instant, maybe it's because maybe there's a defense reaction that uses fuse. Unsure, but I think it's going to be super, super cool.
The go again is really, really nice. Like, go again on these permanent items is just, oh man.
And for blue,
it's spicy. I know that's the thing. It's like it's like the classic kind of permanent item like templating, right? Like blue doesn't block for anything, all this, but it's got go again and it pops at instant speed. I mean, this is really exciting for me. I mean, this kind of stuff. We've seen 2 cards out of 4 technically that have instant speed interaction on them. It gets me going, man. Like, I want to see more instant speed. I love playing instant speed. I know there's some players who don't, but the idea of doing that in the limited format as well is just, I think it's going to be good.
I'm like wary, I think, to some degree, because I think, Welcome to Wraith and Arcane Rising, we didn't see much of that, and I think that was kind of the start of the game, and a lot of people might cling to that. And to be honest, myself as well, like, I do like that aspect that a lot of the decisions were made on the way that you sculpted your hand and pitched your deck. And as you know, there's like the power levels increased and you've had things like instants come in, that kind of matters a little bit less. So I hope that they still strike a balance between that, especially in limited and constructed. I'm unsure what that means, but I think we're going to see some cards come into, quote unquote, balance this current constructive format. But yeah, my eyes are pretty purely on limited right now when I look at these Tales of Aria cards, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I mean, regardless of all other information, I'm excited to finally come out of a constructed season because I think we've been working pretty hard this season, putting in a lot of time. So coming out of that and going into limited, that just kind of feels like a vacation, to be honest. I'm really excited.
I miss it. We might have to play some Monarch to see it off before the pre-release. We might do that next weekend. Maybe we'll record our games or something. I don't know. We need to play some Monarch though. We haven't done it for a while. Last time I absolutely slaughtered Brendan with a beautiful chain pitch stack. So we'll see if we can do that again.
Yeah, Hayden is notably one of the most tilting players to play in limited because his sense for pivot turns is really annoying. And then once you play enough Hayden and Dante, the deck stacking it's on point, to say the least. It gets really tight, but I'm super excited. I know that I may have taken some beats, and Monarch is criminally underplayed. So maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do some Monarch sealed gameplay, throw it up on the YouTube channel before the world premiere of Aria. Just like a fun thing to do, maybe just additional. And I'm game to play.
Yeah, we'll do it. Say our farewell to Monarch Limited, a format that at the start of its release I did play a reasonable amount of, and I really enjoyed it. I'm sad that we didn't get to do more of it. I'm actually sad that one of the things that I love doing with limited formats in general in games is just having like a weekly draft. So I don't, there might be a short season of limited, but one of the things I love doing is just like going and drafting once a week with like, maybe some locals, whether it be with friends, and just playing that format. And didn't get to do that this time, unfortunately. It's pretty crazy now, actually. the time that for us here in Sydney, and we're very lucky. We've been very fortunate with lockdowns and things like that. But we've now been in lockdown for basically 3 months, so we actually missed basically the majority of the Monarch season. So I'm actually more sad about the fact that I didn't get to go and just do some nice weekly drafts, because that's definitely one of my favorite formats. I'm always, every time I go to my local store, I'm like, we could do Welcome to Wraith draft tonight. Is anyone keen for a Welcome to Wraith draft tonight?
Bro, I feel like we're from the same broken record. I say the same crap. And it's like, we don't need Welcome to Wraith cards. I'm like, what? Who cares about cards? Yeah, Welcome to Wraith for it. Yeah.
People are sick of us boomers.
I know, right? The Welcome to Wraith boomers. That's one thing that I'm hoping my local scene elevates to eventually, is I want one store to just have a draft night every week, and like that's just like Friday night draft, like for Magic. I just want that in Flesh and Blood. Like I don't want like the rotating format where it's like, it's Construct today, it's Blitz tomorrow, and then it's it's Shield here. It's just like, just have a draft, and then because like once you play enough and you have like your constructed season, you got all the stuff you got to focus on. It's nice to be able to take a break from the game, but still kind of play the game and improve at the game and just chill out. And I think draft is the way to do that at the moment. So that is what I'm looking forward to.
I find Limited a good way to decompress if I'm not testing it. It's the same thing with like playing Blitz at the moment. Like I actually quite like playing Blitz at the moment, because it's just like I just get to throw away games, and it sounds a bit bad, but I'm still learning things from them. But it just means it's just less. I feel like I need to take less from them. I feel like when I play Constructed right now, I need to take a lot from every game I play to get the most out of it, which, that's probably my own pressures, I guess, and just us as a group and the way we talk. But I really do enjoy playing Blitz at the moment, and Limited as well. If I had the opportunity to play that, I think I would be just enjoying that break. And Brendan, what they say, in terms of you having your weekly draft night, 4 p.m.'s dinner, 5 p.m. draft, 8 p.m. bed. So, get back to your routine.
Yeah, I thought that was going to somehow transition to an active player turn 0. One additional turn.
That's time in the round.